Hey everybody, it's Rajesh here.
And Tane here.
Welcome to our podcast, Baskets of Knowledge, Chats with a Difference. In our podcast, we invite guests from around the country and around the world to talk about how they got to where they're at the moment. It's about a journey, it's about an experience, it's about their life. All right, kia ora koutou, everybody. Welcome to our 79th episode of Baskets of Knowledge. You might have noticed that we haven't had anything for the last 5 weeks, and that's because I was away in Europe having a holiday, and on a holiday, no podcasting. So it's a great holiday, and we'll talk about that a bit later on. As you know, over the last 78 episodes, we have tried to bring, and we hope we've brought people from around the country and across the world that we think are pretty awesome and amazing. And today is no different. When I say we, Tana's not here at the moment. He'll be back in a few minutes, and when he joins us, he will say where he's been. So today we and I am really excited about this conversation. I've seen this young person from the last 4 years or 5 years, and I've seen them grow and do some pretty cool things, which we'll talk about today. So let's welcome Kobe Miller to our podcast. Welcome, Kobe.
G'day, thank you.
No worries. Kobe, before we start about what you're doing right now, let's talk about you as a year 13 when I first met you all those years ago and where you are right now. If I said to you, hey, Kobe, in 4 years' time or 5 years' time, you are going to be rowing for New Zealand and you're going to finish your degree and life is going to be in a certain different pathway for you. What would you have to say to me at that point in time?
Gosh, yeah, back then I still remember like vividly, I still remind myself like at that point when you talked to us at Multiple Boys College, I was in a situation I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. I was like, oh, I'm so over school. I got to the end of year 13, I'm like, oh, I don't want to touch school books ever again. But then I took a gap year. I was still quite young with the rowing. I had another year of under 19s under my belt. So that's when I went to Japan and competed at the World Champs. And I guess after that, I sort of found the motivation to be like, oh, actually, let's give university a go and everything. The whole sort of like perception of university sort of scared me a little because I was like, oh, you have to be real smart to go to uni. But then actually, it's just like the hard work you put in. I think, you sort of reassured me that in that conversation I had in year 13, like, anyone can do it. And yeah, it was pretty cool. Like just thinking back, like that was so long ago and I wouldn't have expected any of this to like sort of happen from where my mind was back then.
No, it's crazy. You mentioned a couple of things there. You mentioned hard work, but also the gap year. So let's talk about the gap year, because some people think about gap years as you're doing it because you're not sure what you want to do. But sometimes I think there's a good motivation to do gap year, and I think your gap year was probably a good way for you to go. Okay, let's take a break and think of what I want to do. How did you find that?
Yeah, it was like perfect for me. I think it was like the biggest blessing because I actually just got to have like a complete break from everything, focus on rowing, and then obviously I was like living at home for a little bit with mum and dad supporting me, and then I moved up to Cambridge to pursue the under 19 team, and I really like enjoyed that and enjoyed having like some time just to be like, oh, just to do what I sort of wanted to do, and then once it all finished and the end of the year came around, I was like, all right, now I'm definitely keen to like I have had new motivation again, to be
Yeah,
honest, and it was really good.
it's crazy how that happens when you take a break from something, you get
Yeah,
motivated again. Talk about motivation. What is your motivation against rowing? I read something on a website just before that get inspired or the inspired athletes that rowing was basically something to get you fit. That wasn't the goal to get to, it was I'm just gonna get fit. And is that
yeah.
true?
Oh, I think back in the day, during my high school days, I was a bit of an overweight kid, so I sort of
Yep.
did run to like, really get fit for basketball because basketball was my main sport back then. But then as I started getting a bit taller and, a bit fitter with rowing and started getting a bit better at it, it became more of my priority. So yeah, I think back then it was more of just about like, getting fitter and leaning out. But I guess now it's like some results were showing, and now everything's going to the world stage now, trying to go for gold there. So it's pretty cool just seeing like how different motivations and goals have sort of blossomed over the last couple of years, how they've all changed.
And it's so funny because you start off with one pathway, you want to get fit for basketball, and now it's actually become your main sport, which is crazy
Yeah,
how life does that to you, hey?
yeah,
And then
no,
I've also got a question to ask you, which is pretty crazy. I'm very lucky. I work with people from Marlborough over the last X amount of years, and I always find that there's some really amazing athletes that come out of Marlborough. What do you think it is in the Marlborough region where people just seem to want to excel? You know, you've got amazing rowers, you've got George Glover and he's crazy thinking of doing his cool things there. Lucy
Yeah.
Harmon and as a cross country person, for a very small region, you produce some amazing athletes. What do you think it is from that region?
I don't know. I think we consider ourselves underdogs. Like
Yeah,
we're not the biggest city or anything like that. You know, we're a small town compared to like Christchurch and stuff, and we just have that like sort of hearts that we're like, oh, we want to beat these big guys. So I think it's just that like underdog mentality where we're like, you know, we can train just as hard as these people. We have more resources, and you know, we can beat them. So I think it's just sort of like that sort of mindset around it.
yes, it's pretty awesome because you know, like I said, you see so many young people now, young adults, and they're performing at not just athletic stage, but also academically that are just crushing. And you're like, wow, a small region that, like you said, you know, you just think about Blenheim or Marlborough, you just think about wine. But actually, if you think about what it actually is, there's some amazing entrepreneurs and amazing athletes that come from that, as you said, that mindset of, hey, we're small, but we're pretty gritty. You know, don't underestimate us, which is pretty cool. Well, underestimating. So you came to university. And what was that jump for you? Because you had high school, finished up high school, took a gap year, did some cool things in your gap year, and coming to university. What is that like? Because I guess you were 1 year away from your year group that has moved forward. What is that like for you?
It was a bit of a shock because from the rowing season, I ended up getting glandular fever in about January of 2020 of my first year, and then it's sort of like I missed the first 2 weeks of university, and then you know the first 2 weeks of university is pretty crucial because you get to find your friend groups and your halls
Yeah.
and everything. And I sort of like got there, I only knew a couple people, so it was a bit of a shock to me being like, oh gosh, everyone's gone through their O-week phase and stuff already, and hadn't had a tour around campus. So I was like pretty clueless to where I was, what I was doing. But you know, I think it was just good having like that whole support around me. The whole like I made good friendships and stuff, and good connections with my RAs and everything. So yeah, it was like a big shift from going from high school to university for sure, because it was like so much more workload than what I was used to. But I think, you know, I saw everyone else around me doing, you know, working hard, going to library. It sort of motivated me to knuckle down and get my stuff sorted. So, and it worked out. I had, you know, probably a really successful semester, even though the COVID sort of came around back then. But yeah, it was really cool.
We'll touch on COVID in a second, and we'll just go one step back. So, when you were in year 13 and you had your gap year and you came to university, did you have an idea of what you'd like to study? And did that change in your gap year? And then when you came to university, did it change a little bit again in your first year, or was it pretty set the whole way through?
I guess in year 13 I did really well in PE, and I obviously love playing sport and everything. So that's what I was more leaning towards. But then I also thought it'd be cool to have my own business. And I wanted to study business. And I got hooked on that because I saw heaps of other people, like sort of my role model studying business. But then I was like, oh, actually, you know, I'm just in love with sports. So I gave that a nudge, and then it sort of worked out because I ended up loving the study and learning about the body and all that. So yeah, it was pretty cool.
And I love that because you know a lot of people forget that their passion is actually a pretty cool way to study. You know, like you said, you know, you in business might have been a motivator, but that wasn't your jam. And you know, you might have done it and gone, cool, maybe gone, this is tough. But your passion, you know, was sports, so you just follow that. And a lot of people don't do that. They have a passion and then they go, no, but my passion is not going to be interesting at university, so I'm going to do something else. And then the wheels just fall over. And you would have seen that at university and with some of your peers, I'm guessing.
Yeah, for sure. Like the study definitely sort of like takes over, and you have to be pretty hooked in on it and everything like that. And really just like finding a balance, especially like being a sort of athlete down in Dunedin, like you can't get roped into the culture too much and everything. So you gotta really find that balance to be successful at both pretty much.
Yeah, and that's another great segue, I guess. You know, going to university, you had a goal. You were an athlete already because you'd gone to Japan. What is it like being an athlete or heading towards becoming an athlete in a culture where, you know, whatever university you go to, there's the temptation of alcohol and going out late and partying, which is part of life. But as an athlete, you've also got to manage that and your study as well. What is that like for you as a young person?
Yeah, I guess I found it not too bad because I
Yeah,
feel like I have pretty good self-discipline, and
yeah,
if I was feeling tired from a week of training and everyone was, I wasn't easily influenced as much to go out and be pre-pictured and stuff. But, I still had my good nights down Dunedin when I felt like it, when my mates had, their birthday parties and everything. But I felt the main priorities for me down there were, rowing because I wanted to make teams and then study to, really keep me busy and learn and everything. So I was really passionate about those two. And then, yeah, hanging out with friends and stuff, and was sort of just came along the side of it when I had free time. So yeah, it was just found a really good balance over those last 3 years.
And I guess self-discipline is key. It's very easy to go balance, but if you don't have self-discipline, the balance goes out the window pretty quickly.
Yeah,
And
yeah, sure.
talk about self-discipline. Along comes COVID. What is that like for you, both as a young person, but also as someone that's training in a sport that requires you to be around other people in a team sport, I guess. Team, but individual sport, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I guess if I go to 2020 in my first year, it was
Yeah,
COVID was almost the perfect time for me, to be honest, because I was still battling glandular fever, and then I still had that hope, was like I was wanted to make the NZ under 21 team, but then that ended up getting cancelled. But I was training pretty hard for it, but I didn't give myself too much of a break after
yeah,
Glange. So I ended up getting post-viral fatigue, and that set me out for about a couple months, just sleeping 12, 13 hours a day and still waking up tired, and
uh,
all my energy would just be to like, all right, go do my lectures, and then I'd have to have another nap during the day. So that was a tough time back at home doing
yeah.
that. But I mean, yeah, it was all during COVID, so everyone else was doing nothing, so it was like perfect timing, really. So all sport was cancelled as well, so I wasn't missing out on much, really.
Really, that worked out quite well for you. If we take the grand scheme of things, you're like, all right, cool, this is perfect.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. So I was very lucky.
And what is it like? So we're gonna just take out your whole university career, I guess. What is it like studying and also trying to complete it at a high elite level? Because people say to me, "Oh, I can't do one or the other. It's either got to be an athlete, I've got to be an academic, and I can't do both." What is that like for you when having both of those things, and how did the university help you with that there?
I reckon it was perfect. I think like study and training creates like the perfect balance for an athlete, in my opinion, unless you don't really realize a full paper workload, like being a full-time student, how much like mental stress like can sort of take a toll on your mind
Yeah,
and the body and how it affects the body. So in my last year, um, in 2022, there was a bit of a challenge because my training load increased a lot. And so did my study, because I was like, I've got to finish this last year. I want to finish my full 3 years full time. But in my first 2 years, I found it awesome because I was really just like creating my own timetable around down in Dunedin when I was based down there. So I think it was perfect. And a lot of the athletes up here now, based in Cambridge, do 1 to 2 papers each semester, like online, and it's the sort of like perfect balance because during the day you just get to sit down and actually like recover properly, but
yeah,
then you're also keeping yourself busy. So
yeah.
it's awesome.
It's just really cool, and I'm glad to hear that because there's this the whole conception of athlete versus study. It's not going to work together, but you've just said, hey, you can make it work. And I guess you would have also spoken to your lecturers in your department about the stuff that you're doing. Hopefully, I don't know. I don't know if you did. Did you do that, or was it just a hey, you do your own thing and they do their own thing, and then somehow the worlds clash and you go, oh damn,
No, I definitely had constant communication going on with all my professors at the time. So
yeah,
they were a huge helping hand, especially in my final year when I did under 23. So
yeah.
yeah, there were a few times where I had to go off to camps and everything in my second year, and it was just like asking for those little extensions and a little bit of special consideration here and there, but it was perfect.
But and I guess in the peer school, a lot of your peers are all athletes of some sort. I'm sure there's quite a few that are high level athletes, so it's something that they're used to. Let's just say if you're doing history, they might go, I don't know, assumptions. I don't know.
Yeah, it was also really good having like friends outside the rowing and my like classes and everything, because then I got to meet new people and then have new study buddies and stuff to help me if I was behind, or usually I was behind on a few things, so they'd get me up to speed. And it was just like the perfect world, because then I'm away from that rowing world, and now I'm like,
Yes,
it is my like, and another identity of like actually Kobe's studying and he's got a whole life away from rowing, so that was
yeah.
really cool.
And I like that because lots of people get identified by the particular identity. They go, "Oh, Kobe the rower versus Kobe the study person versus Kobe the." So it's really awesome that you can navigate all those worlds. And I think all of us have to do that. We all get one sort of identity, and you get
Yeah,
tarnished with that. But actually, there's a lot more to you than that one identity. Talking
yeah.
about identity, why would you come to Otago? I mean, you just mentioned just at the moment that you're in Cambridge, which is close to the University of Waikato, which is just down the road. And life would have been so much easier for you if you had just gone up south. I mean, up north, sorry. Was there any specific reason why you chose to come down south?
There are a few reasons. Like, I definitely was considering Waikato,
Yeah,
but my whole perception was like, gosh, I've got so many more years of rowing ahead of me. I don't want to be just stuck in Cambridge for the rest of my life, you know? So,
yeah,
and Otago I thought was awesome because they offer a really good rowing scholarship, which helped out my family a lot financially. And then, obviously, previously they've recently just started back up actually the rowing China trips with our manager Glenn has really good connections with overseas of Japan and China, and they offer to race pretty good universities over there and have trips of a lifetime, and they're always we've always heard that they're unforgettable trips, and that's sort of what motivated me to go to university down there, because I knew that if I was studying, I'd be having also a blast rowing as well. So yeah.
yeah. That's pretty cool. I think, like you said again before, it's your identity is not growing. Your identity is Kobe, and the other
Mm.
stuff is all it's just incidentally that happens at the same time as you're studying. What was the hardest part about studying? We all talk about university being an amazing time, which you mentioned as well. But university is not hunky dory all the time. There's going to be challenging times. Are there some challenging times that you remember that defined you, or that you actually were like, man, this is not okay for you as a young person?
Yeah, I guess it wasn't all smooth sailing. I definitely remember my first year, like just trying to get the ropes around it all and everything. Like, I remember I was doing heaps of like lab assignments and everything. Wasn't getting like extremely like good marks in a few things. So I was like, oh, I thought I nailed this, and then turns out I wasn't doing the formatting properly. I wasn't referencing properly. So there was a lot of things I had to learn along the way to, really get the university experience right with the study and making sure I was doing everything, to the T, because I'm consider myself a bit of a perfectionist. So I'm like, I want to be getting those top marks, or at least know that the effort I put in is what the grade I'm going to get. So yeah, there's a few things that sort of stumped me a little that I had to learn, and the few labs and the sport and exercise with the Excel, that's always a bit challenging, and Excel's hard sometimes. I find that quite
Yeah.
challenging. So that was for me, the ones that I came across that stumped me.
Yeah, and I think those are things that most young people need to hear, that university is not easy. There's things that you think you're super good at, and you go, actually, I don't know anything here. And it's good to admit that, hey, I don't know, and get some help to get that sorted. And Excel is something that I used to teach a long time ago, but now I have no idea what's happening there. I just look at it, oh my goodness, this is crazy. So I empathize with you because Excel is a bit of a beast
Yeah.
if you don't know how to use it.
Yeah.
And let's bring focus now and talk about your rowing. So it as someone that is trying to, as a rower, what is it like for you as you try to achieve the milestones? So you did the under 19s, under 23s, and that's always in the back of your mind to try and get into those squads there. And we know New Zealand is a fantastic rowing. They've got a fantastic rowing program that is, I guess, the envy of the world. What is it like for you? Because you are now competing with some amazing human beings to try and get into this posture. And then what is it like when you get told that, hey, Kobe, yeah, you meet the requirements, check, here you go, with those big smiles on your face? What is that like for you?
It's pretty cool. Like, I was really lucky coming into the pathway at Row New Zealand like pretty early. Like, in my final year of high school, I made the under 18 team, and then I went all up through the age groups of under 19s and under 21s, and then did a couple of years of under 23s now. And then, getting the opportunity to be in the elites over summer it's pretty cool. Like, just ticking all those boxes, and it's just knowing that, there's a lot more openness about our trajectory and how we're tracking and everything. So it's just cool knowing that I'm, progressing and developing a lot faster now. So it's just awesome knowing that like there's a pathway there and everything, and that all the other athletes younger than me and stuff now, see me do it, and now they think that they can do it. And I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I guess you must see a lot of young people. But as part of your role, you must see lots of young people that come along and go, "Hey, Kobe, this is pretty awesome. How do you get out there and talk to young people and say, hey, this can be achievable. It's not just for those, like, say, when you put in the hard work, you get to where you go." Do you do that in your current capacity, or is it something that you just see as you're in the wider squad?
Yeah, well, it was actually funny last night. Us boys in the under 23 team here went for a catch up with the under 19 team because they're training up here at the moment, and we had a wee catch up, just open up the floor to Q&As, and um, they were just asking us heaps of questions like, "Can you do rowing alongside uni? Like, what's the university best to go to?" And it was just like pretty cool because when I was putting my feet in their shoes, I wanted to know all those questions, and I was asking them to my role models, and now they're asking me. I just think it's quite a rewarding feeling because it's like I'm the one giving advice now, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's gone full circle, hey? It's gone full
Yeah,
circle, which is pretty cool. And what's it like for you, rowing, I guess, alongside or with people that that would have been your role models as you were growing up, or in the wider development squad, or in your coaching team? How does that? Because New Zealand is very small and it's a very unassuming country, and I always tell people that when I travel, sometimes I see Jacinda Ardern, and I see her in the airport, and we're like, "What are you talking about?" I was like, "Yeah, she's a prime minister, but she's in the airport." Or John Key when he was around, or I haven't seen Chris Hipkins, so but when you just see them, what is that like for you when you see people that are internationally like, "Oh wow," but for you they're just people in your circle, I guess.
I think when I first moved up, I was quite overwhelmed. I was like, "Oh, this is insane." I'm like training alongside Olympians right now. Like they're so fast, and you have sessions where you're like, "Oh, I'm gonna hold them off for as long as I can in this part," but then I just think on the water training, it's awesome. But then you get off the water and you just actually realize like they're just another person at the end of the day, and they're just like just as nice and curious for a conversation as you are. And it's just pretty cool knowing that like those people are just up for a conversation, and they're just normal people, and it's pretty cool.
Oh, brilliant. Tane's joined us. Welcome, Tane. This is a great way to bring you in. Tane, we're talking about, Kobe and how he has his amazing mentors that he's working with and rowing aside. And I'm going to bring you in because you are now coaching some pretty amazing young people. What is it like for you? Because you're coaching these young wahine or young females that are some of them pretty amazingly amazing, and yet they're also just human beings. How do you navigate that world when you are trying to be an awesome coach, but you've also got to treat them as young scallywags sometimes?
Yeah, it's a very interesting point you raise. I think, coaching, it's been quite an experience. And I think probably the best benefit, especially this year, when I started, was going into these roles. I didn't know these young females, so although some of them had represented the South Island or represented New Zealand in rugby league, or some of them are now making the Farah Cup squad for the Otago Spirit, which is amazing to see. But it's also good that I didn't have that background information, so that I treated every girl the same, regardless of if they were, really top elite players or whether it was their first time having a go. And I think also, especially within the high school team that I coach, some of those girls who haven't played before, it actually allows them to play better because, when they're defending or attacking against some girls that are playing up at that top level, they don't know, it doesn't matter who the player they're playing against actually is. And so I think it's definitely a interesting balance the more you get involved in the squad and with the girls and understand the lives they lead, but also trying to be unassuming and treating every girl as individuals, but also not at different spectrums. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think like you say, Kobe and as you said, Tana, is when they're on the field, they're amazing. They're in the elements. And back to the word we used to start, Kobe, the identity is being a rugby player or a rower, but as soon as they're off the field, they are the person. They're just who they are. They're either nice people or they might not be nice people. Not everyone's nice out there. Some people are not nice people. And let's just address that as well. Most people are very nice, but you might have a few that are, I don't know, they get along with you, but you're an awesome athlete. So happy days. Kobe, would you like to share what a day in the life of training is like? Because you've made it all sound really easy for you. Like, oh, yep, I did this, I went through this, but it's not easy, right? You put in the hours, you put in the mahi to get what you do. What does a day in the life look like? We're going to talk about first maybe when you're at university, and then maybe what it looks like now, because the two very different worlds.
Yeah, well, down at university, it was definitely a lot different. I was a lot busier back
Yep.
then.
Yep.
So I'd usually wake up at about just before 5 o'clock and bike down to training from my flat, and then I'd do usually around like 20 to 24K session. Usually, there'd be some intensity stuff in there, or it'd just be like an aerobic based session on the water. Sometimes, the Otago Harbour gets a bit of a bad rep for being rough all the time, but I mean, when it has its good days, it's amazing. So that'd usually be it, and then a bike back to the flat, and then have a bit of a feed, get all that in before about 8:45, and then I'm walking to my lecture wherever it is at Archway or wherever, somewhere, trying to sit beside Tane so I can copy his notes. And then pretty much, yeah, from there I'd be going to the library and then walk back to the flat for lunch, go back in if I had another lecture or study, and then go back to the flat and get ready for my afternoon session. It'd usually be like weights or another session down at the rowing club from like 4 till 6, and then I'd get back and cook dinner, or dinner would be made by one of the flatmates, and then I'd be usually in bed by 9 o'clock and repeat, really. So
Yeah.
it was like living out of the flat the whole time, pretty much. It just felt like I was there when I woke up, and then go back there for lunch, and then
Yep.
yeah, get to sleep. So it was definitely a lot busier down in Dunedin, but it kept me busy and kept me happy, and I loved it.
Oh, brilliant. So I mean, that sounds like pretty structured. You know what you've got to do. You wake up, you do your graft, you do your training, you do your study, you copy Tana's notes, can't read his handwriting, but that's okay. And then you have your lunch, you repeat. And then you finish that up, and now you are in Cambridge. What is that like for you? Because there's no real study as such.
Yeah, it's being up here is taking a little bit to get used to. Like down there was a timetable for uni, and then there was a strict timetable for rowing as well, because people had to get to ADMs and stuff. So we had set times, whereas up here it's a bit more flexible, and the training's a bit later because we're a bit more lenient up here. So we're not on the water till 7 a.m. usually. So I usually get up at about 5:30 and get a good feed in, and then off to training. And then there's a lot more mileage up here, so the sessions are usually a bit longer. And then I'd get back, and then probably with my little gym part time, I'm there for 2 hours, like 3 times a week. So I'd be there till about midday. Get back, have some lunch, and then early afternoon session we have usually weights at about 2:30, and then get back, and then I'm getting some recovery food in, and then if I'm on dinner or someone's cooked dinner, and then yeah, the sort of like the day gets eaten up. There's like you just little chunks, like 1 or 2 hours, that you're just like you don't have enough time to do something, and it's just the time's taking me a bit more to get used to, and it's different from an organizational sort of perspective. But
Yeah.
it's definitely like manageable and everything, and I really like it. I feel like I've improved heaps, but I think I enjoy a lot more time during my day, like I had at university, where I had like, oh, I can spend that long in the library and stuff.
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy, and I think that's something that's hard to explain to anyone that's transitioning from high school to university, and university to a job, because each phase of life has got different kinds of structure, and as you go forward or backwards, sometimes the structure disappears, and you've got to create your own structure, which you mentioned right at the start. The whole self-discipline is really key in all of those stages there. But sometimes you just get the structure, happy days, and sometimes you have to create the structure. And Tana, I'm guessing you're facing that right now because you have your honors program happening, you have your coaching happening, you have your volunteer work happening, and you've also got to run this podcast at some point, and you've got to do all the work that I send you. So how do you find that?
Yeah, I think it's been an interesting transition from undergrad to postgrad. But again, it's similar to Kobe's experience. I think it's weird because you have more time and you have more flexibility, but it almost seems like I don't get as much done because I don't, it's not like I have to do it now. I can kind of, I decide when I want to do my study, or when, obviously coaching's set and where it's supposed to be, but there's a lot more flexibility about how I do my study. And so, if you wake up a bit later, it's like, okay, it's all right. It's not the end of the world. Whereas, when you've got structured lectures that you've got to get to, and then you've only got 1 hour, in your day to actually do some study. So you actually got to sit down and do it. Otherwise, you won't do it in the day. You're actually quite driven. So I think that's been my biggest struggle, I guess, has been trying to fit it all around my schedule, but also so it's, so it still is focused and not just airy fairy, I'll do it when I want kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's hard to teach anyone that. It just happens, right? And you just either get into the flow, you don't get into the flow, and I always at the start of your honors program, remember, Tana, we spoke about, oh, you've got lots of time, but every single year you see people going, oh, damn, I've got to hand in my thesis in 2 weeks' time, but I've done nothing when you have the whole year to do it. And like, where's the time gone? It goes on to exactly what you said. Oh, that's okay. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it a bit later, or I'll do other things to fill up my time, which is crazy. Which is what I do at work as well, but don't tell my boss. Kobe, your family influence in your training and your life as a young person going to university, what has that been like for you? At the start you said, you got a scholarship which helped with your family, with the finances. Has that been something that you've had amazing support through with your whole study and training and rowing career as well?
Yeah, family's definitely been pretty huge for me as part of like my rowing and study. Like I definitely chose Otago to ease the financial stress on my family and everything, which is, I feel like it's really worked out in the long run because, the first year everyone sort of loves the fees free, which is primo, and then a lot of the scholarship covered the halls costs and everything. So yeah, I feel like being at Otago was a really good fit to help me get my degree and row, and then also ease the financial costs on my family, which is really nice. And then now I've got the opportunity to go over to the States and do some post-grad work over there, and that's on a full scholarship to Northeastern, so I feel like it's just a win-win, and my family don't really have to worry about me, which is what I've wanted at the end of the day. I don't want them to have to worry about me financially, even though they'll always be there for me and support me, but it's just a good feeling knowing that I don't need them to worry about me financially, so much is good.
Yeah, and I guess that it also eases one less burden for you. You go, right, cool, I can just focus on my study, focus on my rowing. Don't have to worry about because finance is massive, finance we forget about that. Free fees is awesome in your first year, but then after that you've got to pay for everything. And I was at a talk the other day, and I remember someone saying to me that first year is all good, second year is okay-ish, but third year, when you're in a flat and you're like, damn, I have to find a job because I've got no other funding models, life becomes pretty tough and it becomes pretty stressful because you have to survive, and you also have to finish a degree. So it's just pretty crazy. So like you said before, to have those support structures there, it's really, really awesome. Postgrad study, let's talk about the States. How did that all happen, and let's talk about that. How did that happen, and is that something that you're looking forward to? And I'm sure you're looking forward to, but let's talk about that.
Yeah, I guess I've been toing and frying with the idea for years now. Like even when I was deciding at the end of high school, like, oh, I don't want to stay in New Zealand and do this university, or I don't want to go to the States, because it was a very conflicting decision for me. And I know that it's especially for a young talented athletes around. We had that chat the other night with the juniors. Like a lot of them are in that trying to make that decision now with what I was trying to do back then, and I sort of valued the New Zealand university system. I thought it'd be awesome to have a degree here. That's why I'd pounced at Otago. But now it's I have the opportunity where it's I'm not quite at that speed, at that Olympic level yet. And I've aged out of under 23s now. So there's no actual real team for me to be in, and no goal for me next year. So I thought it would be a perfect opportunity to, take the opportunity of going to the States, rowing over there, and, getting some post-grad work out of it, and still enhance my rowing a lot, because the boys that have come back from the States this year who are in the elites and stuff, they're fast, man. So it's exciting stuff, that you can go over there and get qualified and still come back into the system with Row New Zealand supporting you all the way as well, which is pretty cool.
That is very cool. You can get the best of both worlds. You increase your academic capacity while you're learning as well, which is great. When do you head away?
And end of August. So
Yeah.
we start in September. I'll be living in an apartment in Boston with two of the rowing boys, one of them who's a Kiwi as well, actually. So it's pretty
Awesome.
cool. So he's been there for about 4 or 5 years. So it's good knowing that I have someone who's been there for a while and will show me the ropes around Boston and everything. So yeah, the plan is to be there for a year, but then I mean, if I end up finding a job there, that's pretty hard to turn down. I could try and do that for another year, but my whole goal is to come back for the 2028 Olympics and get back into the Row New Zealand system and train for that pretty much. So yeah.
Awesome. It's awesome to have that goal there, but like we said at the start, things shift along the way. You might have an opportunity there that takes you on a different path there, but it's really awesome to have that goal, and really excited to see what happens with you in the States. Boston, that'll be interesting.
Yeah, it's very exciting. I can't wait. And there's just like
Yeah,
heaps of Kiwis there at Boston Uni, Harvard, and
yeah,
Eastern. So it's going to be a very exciting time.
yeah. Very, very cool. So in interim, you are still in the squad doing your training, but you also working at the gym and doing what you got to do. Is that correct?
Yep, yep. So
Yeah,
yeah, keeping busy here at the moment, and
yeah.
I'm financially able to look after myself and everything. I'm enjoying like the training. I'm feeling fit and strong, and then we're coming into our intensity sort of block now. So we're doing a lot more speed work, getting us race fit for world champs. So it's very exciting times at the moment.
Very, very cool. Can I ask you a question? And this might not be something you've experienced, but maybe you've seen it in your time with your rowing and also while at university. Is the effects or the weight of mental health on trying to achieve all the stuff here at a certain age. Have you experienced it, or have you seen others around you that have experienced it, and how have they gone through that? Um, you read about it in the media, but you wish it when it's way too late. And it's all things always simmering. Some people do it really well, some people don't. And as someone that's living and breathing that well, there, what do you see as an like insider and as an outsider, without naming names, obviously, just as a superficial story?
Yeah. For me, I think for the study and rowing, I've been quite lucky. Like I feel like everything from my like perspective has been achievable. Like I always knew that after my first semester and my first year, and I got some good grades. I was like, okay, I can get through every semester now, and I can, if I put in all this work, put in more work, I'm gonna, I know I can achieve getting a degree. And it was the same with rowing. Like I had that confidence where it's like, I can beat this guy in a race. If I know that if I keep training just as hard as them, I'm going to be faster than them. So I had that sort of like mindset over those 3 years when I was down in Dunedin, where it's like I just got to keep that balance, you know, right, and then I know that I can, at the end of the day or at the end of those 3 years, I can come out with a degree and progressing with my rowing and developing. So for me, that was achievable for me. But I know that a few people jump around the idea of like what they actually want to do with their study. Like I know a lot of people change their majors and stuff, and I've seen one person go to 3 different universities and trying to find out what he actually wants to do. So it's just, yeah, it's hard, I guess, for some people to try and actually know like what they want to do or what they want to prioritize at that time. But I think I got through pretty lucky because I knew, well, like I had a plan and I knew what I wanted to do. So yeah.
I'm going to ask this question because this is something that I've noticed from you when I first met you all these years ago, even though you might not know this, is your mindset is really, really is focused and it's developed. It's a growth mindset. Is that something that was nurtured from an external thing, or has it always been part of your fabric, I guess? Because I meet a lot of people, and some people the mindset is there, some people have got to develop it. But through this conversation, we've seen that this is something that you're like, cool. Semester one, if I can crack semester one, then it's all good to go. Same thing with your rowing. As you said, I can beat that person. Is that something that's just instilled, or have you learned it through family and friends? Or yeah,
Yeah, I think it's been pretty ingrained with me with family. Like I have an older brother and he was a bit of a sports superstar back in the day. Like he was the one that got me into rowing in high school, and he was pretty successful. He'd got like national team trials, and then he was also a rugby player and got national rugby trials and everything, and played for the Tasman Marcos. So I think having him as an older brother growing up, it really just like seeing him achieving all these things. It's like he always just taught me like if you work hard enough, you can do it. So I guess it was just like a sort of family thing, and he learned off my dad and then his brothers, and it's just like a big Miller family sort of like mindset, I guess I like to call
oh, brilliant. We need to get the recipe for that there. So, look,
it.
I look up for the Miller book for mindset. The Miller mindset would be great, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
Fantastic. That is really cool. And I guess it all comes down to, I do a lot of coaching, and in my coaching, I always talk about proximity is power. And, if for you, your proximity was your family, and that power just came through there. And Tana, I guess you've experienced the same thing in a different way, where you've surrounded yourself with people that have helped you, not just in the coaching world, but I'm also going to talk about your identity in the Māori world, because that's been a world that you've had to transcend as you come to university.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to, I think as Kobe says, it comes down to the confidence and, even if that support just allows you to do what you want to do. if that makes sense. You know, like often I think you go into these spaces and initially you're not very confident because you know you haven't been in that environment before, you haven't been in that setting before. But having those people around you who are willing and able to actually show you that it's okay to try and fail, or you know, it affords you that opportunity to go, okay, I'm going to go and give this opportunity my all, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But at least I've been given that opportunity. So I think in both those spaces, I've been given that opportunity, and so it's about having that confidence to actually believe in what you're doing, because I think that's where the true power of you staying in that environment comes.
And I think that, but the other thing that you both have mentioned as well is you've also accepted that, you know, it might all be there, but if you don't, like Kobe, you said your brother has been amazingly, you know, he's been influential, but you could just be like, I call this my brother. I'm not like my brother to do my own thing. And Tanya, something for you could be like, yeah, whatever, this is not my thing. They've been helpful, but not my thing. So I think it's important to acknowledge the fact that you've embraced that. Kobe you used the word luck quite a bit in your conversation, but I think um, you underestimate the power of all the stuff that you've done and what's been around you. So, you know, we will make our own luck, I guess, which is pretty cool.
Yeah,
We've
I guess like
been,
Anna was saying as well about like support, like realizing like, you know, I think people need to realize that they can actually utilize all the support around them. Like I know that in rowing, I knew who to reach out to, who I could have what conversation with who. Like if I know that I've been talking to Fiona Burke, who's the USA around New Zealand, the Asian person here, and she's sort of like she went to Otago University as well, and she just like she's seen both perspectives of like what the States is like and what New Zealand University is like, and then she's always told me like I'd love the States, you know, it's all like, you know, it would fit me perfectly. And I'm glad now that it's like I've gone through the New Zealand universities, and she's still reminding me like just take that opportunity. And then obviously like with the study as well, like if I wasn't going too well in like one paper, I knew that, you know, physiology in my first year, I was like, gosh, how am I going to pass this? This is like hubs or something. It was crazy. But then I knew that I had to like, okay, there's tutorials all available for this. I have to attend all these, or else, you know, I'm gonna be battling. And then I probably got my best grade ever at uni in that paper. So I was like, you know, one of my hardest papers I thought I'd be facing, I ended up doing really well in. So yeah, I guess just like utilizing that support.
Fiona Burke, crazy. When you see her, tell her, say hello. She would probably remember. She might not remember me, but I remember her when she was at Otago, and I taught her in one of her papers, and her sister as well, which is pretty crazy.
Oh,
So
crazy.
small world, hey? University.
Yeah.
Otago's small, and New Zealand's even smaller. So that's really cool. But it's really cool that you have a liaison person that has done both. You know, they've done the university New Zealand experience, they've done the States experience, and they're also in the rowing space, so they can give you the advice and say yay or nay. And I guess
Mm.
Tana, you're gonna have the same thing happening as you finish up your honors now in a few months' time. You're gonna have to transcend that. Okay, cool. I've got to find somebody that's in the coaching space if that's the way you want to go, or in the space of, you know, your study, which is what Kobe did with his study. Do you stay in New Zealand? Do you stay coaching, or what do you do?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question at the moment. I'm looking into my options, and I think that's the thing, is just being all right that I can sit there for, you know, I've still got a couple of months before I really have to decide. You know, I guess the main worry is the flatting situation, but outside of that, you know, I think that's the biggest thing I've learned is, you know, it's easy to stress about these things and go, oh, I need to make a decision right now because otherwise it's going to affect everything else. But to actually be like, oh, actually, there's still, you know, 6 months effectively until I have to make that, you know, those hard decisions. So yeah, and talking to people as well, I think, you know, often we don't utilize the people around us to, you know, even if it's just for them to listen, it still allows you, you know, instead of just sitting with yourself and having to go through all the concerns and pros and cons, actually just having someone who can sit there and be neutral about the situation too.
Yeah, this is very, very true. It's all about time, you know. You can start stressing about it right now, but it's not going to change the situation. So you just got to take it as it comes. And like you both said, you know, seek out help from people that have been there and have done that, and are going through that process there. Kobe, we are coming towards the end of this podcast. We're recording for about 40 minutes or so. One of the things that we like to ask our guests is in relation to our podcast title. So our podcast title is Basket of Knowledge, and every episode we ask our guests to give us one piece of knowledge that they'd like our listeners to bring to their basket of knowledge. So sitting here today, from whichever facet of your life you'd like to talk about, is there one piece of knowledge you'd like to give us, Tanya, myself, and yourself, to our listeners as well?
Gosh, putting me on the spot here, really. All right, vast and knowledge. Like one piece of knowledge I'd like to share.
Yeah.
Um, Knowledge. I guess I could go down completely different pathways here
You
if I
can
want.
go. You can go to any pathway you want. It doesn't actually matter any pathway. There is It's okay, Kobe. Every person that we ask this question to has the exact same reaction. So you're all
Yeah,
good.
I guess for me, it's like I think the balance thing is hugely important. And like having a good balanced life is perfect and not getting hooked into just like one sort of avenue. Like I know that with rowing, a lot of people just get completely reeled in. And I know that we get told like if you want to be successful, you have to be all in. But I feel like you can be all in, but still have that balance of your life. Because I feel like if you get too, you know, you know, jumped up in it all and everything, like it's your whole life, then it's like, well, what else have you got going on in your life? If you get injured, then it's like, well, what have you got left? You got to have a backup plan. You got to have everything else on the outside to really know that you can fall back on. So I think that balance thing is like huge because I knew that there was like a deciding factor for me, like the conversation I had with my parents straight out of high school. They were like, have this gap year, but you got to sort out what you want to do because you can't just go all on and rowing. You need to have something that you can fall back on. So yeah,
I
that's my
like
little knowledge.
I like that because balance is key. Too many times the society says to us, if you want to be an academic, you have to go 100% in. If you want to be an athlete, you've got to go 100% in. And we saw what happened in one of our last guests, Harry Averill, who spoke about his journey where he went all in with running, and that just threw him off in a whole different tangent. And another thing is you said in today's podcast, Kobe, which is identity. If you are so ingrained in your identity of being a rower or being a coach, and that gets taken away from you, then who are you? And like you said before, so I think that's a really, really important piece of knowledge to anyone listening out there, and also for myself. And for out there, that balance is key, and it's not just about balance because you need that in your life, but balance for your own mental health and your well-being is really, really quite important.
Yeah.
Tane, yeah, Tane, anything you want to add to this, or ask Kobe because he jumps in a bit late?
I don't know. Did you touch on burnout at all?
No one touched on burnout. We did speak of mental health and well-being, but yeah, if Kobe, any words on burnout? Which links into balance, I guess.
Hmm.
Like sort of like athletes burnout or like your mental burnout and stuff.
Yeah, probably more like athlete burnout. I'm just thinking, like obviously you said you have quite a busy schedule in your days, so obviously it does link back to balanced as well. But I guess just how you managed burnout, because I guess, like there are some signs that you see early on, and obviously there are some things you don't notice until it's too late. But, is there some way that you learn to manage that as you progress?
Yeah, there was one time where it was uncontrollable for me back in last year in 2022. I came into the under 23 campaign. We had a men's sculling squad, so there was about 5 or 6 of us going for the top boat, which was the quad, and I was doing really well, and then ended up getting COVID, and then bounced back from it. But then it got to a point where I was battling with a few skin infections, and then I was keeping on top of my study and then trying to train and everything. And then I got to the last selection regatta where it was between me and this one other guy. And then I had, 2 exams that week, and I had so much built up stress. I'm like, oh, I really want to make this boat, but I got to pass my exams, but I'm not 100% healthy. I've got this little skin infection. I just like, I feel like I got really burnt out from that, and I didn't perform my best on the water. So that sort of like jeopardized my seat in the boat. And, all credit to the quad, they got over bronze at World Champs last year. And it was cool that I was a part of that process and got them over the line. But I just feel like that's made me realize like, that whole mental stress can really take a toll on your performance and stuff with like trying to, that's where I felt like the balance sort of went out the door because I was like, finding it hard.
Yeah, that's a really let's open up another piece of conversation I'd like to ask if you don't mind. You are gunning and gunning and gunning, and then what happens when you have rejection? When you do the best that you can and you don't make it? What does that feel like for you? When I used to put rejection, but it's not rejection. When you go, I've done all the best I can, and I've been pipped by 1 second, or I haven't handled my assignment in time. How does it feel like for you? Because as you said before, you're driven, you have goals, and sometimes things out of your hand.
That reflection is like the first thing I go to, because I'm like, I question myself. I'm like, well, the what ifs, what if I did something better? What could I have done? I just like reflect on it all. But then I only think about that for about 5 or 10 minutes, and then I just like screw it up, throw it away. Nothing can be done now. Just move on, and then face a new challenge, pretty much. So I think that's where I'm still, trying to improve on that and everything. But I feel like that's my mindset that I go to every time I face a big challenge like that, or face burnout, or like I just sort of go to that mindset of reflection, and then okay, nothing can be done now. I can't change it. Let's move on, and let's keep improving.
I like that, because that can be attributed to anything in life. Not everything's successful. You might fail a test, you might try a business venture, it might fail. You might try a relationship that might fail. You might try things and that fails. And it's very easy for us to just dwell and go, like I said, we all do the what ifs. There's no one in this world that doesn't do the what ifs. But it's about how much time you spend on the what ifs. And like you said, you spend 5 or 6 minutes on it, and you go, okay, cool, I can't change it. And I think it's important for us to do that, as opposed to and to reflect as well. It's important to reflect, as opposed to go, whatever, cool, I'll be there next time. So I think those two key learnings actually are balanced reflection are really important. Balanced reflection and how much time you spend on reflection is really important. So those are two pieces of knowledge that you've shared in the last 10 minutes, which is great. And there's so much more in this podcast here, which is beautiful. Any last words, Tane? You've spoken about burnout. Anything else?
I think it just, reflecting on that balance, I think it is, I think it's really important, and especially, when you are mixing being an athlete with study and with, having to, the financial side of things as well, everything builds up. And so if you can find that balance, it means you give yourself a better shot at doing well at these opportunities. And I think that's something we often miss, especially, in that younger part of the career when we're just getting into it, because we think, I want to do everything. I want to, I want to do really well in rowing and study and work, and I want to do it all. But unfortunately, if you try and do that, it will only last a certain amount of time. And for that time, you might feel great, but eventually it will catch up on you, and eventually you'll have to make those tough decisions of having to pull back from sport or having to pull back from study, because you can't facilitate it all. And I think that's something that I've acknowledged more now that I am getting into the coaching space as well, because growing up, when I was playing rugby league, I was trying to do it all as well and try and push to make those teams. But now that I see it from the coaching perspective, I see how detrimental it can be if you don't find that balance within it all. So I think that's a really good takeaway for this podcast.
Yeah, beautiful. And one last random question, which is not deep or meaningful. What is it like for the two of you being classmates?
It's cool. It's really cool. Like, I just remember like not really knowing Tane, and then one day he was sitting with one of my friends from Halls at a table, and they were both in my class. I was like, I don't really know what to do on that. I'm pretty sure it was Excel, where there was I didn't know the formula or something, and then Tane, boom, snap of the fingers, knew it and helped me out a lot, and then helped me out with referencing and everything. So it was really cool like that. And then I know that one of my really good friends from rowing also was in Studham, where Tane was a RA last year. So it's cool jumping on a podcast now and seeing like old uni mates. We're all doing good things. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, was that Fred? Is that Fred Vessever?
Yes.
Yeah. Small world, like I said, small world. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Tanya, what is it like for you?
I think, it's a really cool experience. And I think especially probably doing specs degree as well, like you get to meet people like Kobe who are, representing New Zealand in a sport. It's not every day that you get to, meet these people who are actually balancing study with rowing and stuff like that. But, as this podcast will show as well, Kobe's a pretty down to earth person. It's not like because he does rowing, it's not his personality. And I think that's it's a credit to him and his character, and that's probably why he's gone so far, is because he's able to do that.
Yeah, awesome. That's really cool. Really, really great sharing that. But what I took away there from that, Tana, is that you enjoy Excel. That's what I heard. That's all I heard from what Kobe said, which is great. Kobe, thank you so much for jumping onto this podcast today. I'm very privileged to have seen you where you are in year 13. I still remember the conversation you had with me about whether you go to university, whether you go to the States, or whether you stay in New Zealand. I remember that all those years ago. And it's really awesome seeing you succeed, not just in the rowing, but also academically and as a young person. So thank you for jumping on. Thank you for sharing the small part of your story right now. And we wish you all the best as you take on this exciting the United States, a whole different world. We'd love to see how you go there. And also just for doing what you do, which is really cool. And I'm pretty sure that every one of our guests and our listeners, every one of our listeners today will have found something that they relate to. And my challenge, as always, if you didn't find something, then you got to listen to the podcast again, because there's lots and lots of pieces of knowledge and wisdom here that Kobe has shared today. So from myself and Tane, thank you very much. And till next time, ka kite everybody, and keep filling your positive knowledge. Bye, everybody.
Thank you for listening to Baskets of Knowledge.
Yeah, we hope that you found something useful to put into your basket of knowledge. And as we said before, remember to put something little into your baskets of knowledge every week. And as always, feel free to like, comment, and share this podcast. Thanks, everybody. Bye.